Hi, this is Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that spotlights the stars of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So sit back, relax, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know.
Well, today's episode of Someone You Should Know features an accomplished author who spent 20 years as a member of the New York City Police Department. He's got a brand new book called Confessions of a Catholic High School Graduate. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Will you please welcome my guest today, Vic Ferrari. Vic, welcome aboard.
Hey, Rick, thank you so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
First off, I have a soft spot in my heart for first responders. I want to thank you so much for your dedicated service to the NYPD and to the fine folks of New York.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that.
Vic, you're a detective in the Auto Crimes Division with a last name like Ferrari. I'm guessing that caused a humorous moment or two. Would you like to share a couple of those?
Well, Ferrari's my pen name. Here's the thing.
All right.
I'm Irish and Italian, and
All
I
right.
got into writing books. I wanted to make money, but I didn't necessarily want the fame and fortune that the fame that went along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked the pen name Vic Ferrari. If you remember the 1970 television show Taxi,
Of course.
when Lotka, the mild-mannered mechanic, would take a blow to the head, he would become this suave, debonair guy that wore too much cologne and one button to one button.
Yeah.
So I went with the name Vic Ferrari.
Okay, so that's just a pen name. I like it though. I really think that's a cool doggone name, man.
It is, and it goes along with being a detective in the NYPD's Auto Crime Division.
I was going to say it's a perfect thing. Vic, you've written 5 previous books in your 20-year police career, beginning with, I like this, Dickheads and Debauchery. This came out in 2016. In 2018, you came out with NYPD Through the Looking Glass, the stories from the inside. A year later, you came out with NYPD's Flying Circus, Cops, Crimes, and Chaos. And then a year later, during the COVID pandemic, you came out with Grand Theft Auto, the NYPD's Auto Crime Division. And then number 5 in the series, the NYPD Law and Disorder in 2021. Can you share a couple of fun moments from any of these books? I just basically want to entice our listeners to get one of these books or maybe all 5 of these books. Just can you share any book, any story from any book?
Sure, I give you a couple of quick ones. So in NYPD, Through the Looking Glass is about the colorful characters I worked with. There was a guy that was terrified of losing his gun, and in the NYPD, if you lose your firearm, you lose 30 vacation days. So he went out drinking, and he hid his gun in his house, the one place he didn't think anyone would look, which was his stove. He comes back to his apartment 4 hours, 9 beers later, hungry, decides he's going to make a snack, preheats the oven to 425.
No.
Yeah. Goes into the living room, starts channel surfing, and there's gunpowder and bullets. The gun starts shooting at him from the kitchen. He's got to crawl out of his apartment on his hands and knees and call 911 on himself.
That's a good one. Want to share one more?
Yeah, sure. And the NYPD's Flying Circus, Cops, Crime, and Chaos, there's a story in there about he was an Irish cop, but the Spanish cops called him El Diablo because he was just such an out-of-control partier that if you worked with him, you would convert to Christianity, get divorced, or go into rehab. And this guy was so out of control, he was in a bar on the Upper East Side of Manhattan by Central Park, and one of those handsome cab operators came in to use the bathroom, those guys that take you around Central Park in a horse and carriage. Mm-hmm. And he basically went outside with 2 floozies and stole the horse and carriage. And the horses figured out that there was an idiot behind the wheel and took off through Central Park, and he wound up, it was like a Ben-Hur chase because 2 other handsome cab operators had to cut him off. So, all my books are loaded with short and funny stories of what happened during my NYPD career.
Wow. That's wonderful. I'm finishing up a 40-plus year radio career. I retired as of the first of the year, and so I can totally sympathize with you or definitely get an idea of some of the craziness that has happened over that 20-year career. That is something special. Here's a question I've wanted to ask ever since I got this interview. You were a member of the NYPD for 20 years. Is there any current or past TV show that correctly portrays the NYPD?
Yeah, the older Law and Orders. Law and Order back in the old days used to get it right. So the show starts off, there's a crime, right? Mm-hmm. And the cops respond and the detectives show up. They're asking questions. They're gathering evidence. They're doing interviews. They go to the district attorney's office. We want to lock this guy up. The DA says, no, you need a little bit more evidence. They write a search warrant. They come back. They lock the guy up. Now the guy wants to flip. Everything gets tied up in a bow in an hour. But for the most part, if you want to know how a criminal case works, within reason, Law and Order, the old days, got it right.
Awesome. All right, very good. So keep that in mind. Anyone who really and truly loves good police dramas and such, maybe go on and do a little channel surfing and binge watch some of the older episodes of Law and Order and get a better perception of what's really going on in the NYPD. Now, when I have a musical guest on, Vic, I always do a little section called Tales from the Road, and this is basically the most infamous road stories. Since I have you on as a former police officer, what's the strangest thing that ever happened to you while you were actually on duty?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I mean, I've walked into homicides like that just occurred. I was looking for stolen Vespa motor scooters in basements of South Bronx buildings, and I walked into a cockfighting ring. I mean, I'm looking for Vespas, and the super's dropping his keys. He opens up the partition to this hidden room, and there's 100 roosters and chickens running around. And I'm like, holy! I just walked into a cockfight ring. So, I mean, the NYPD, it's like The Price is Right at the end when you spin that wheel. You never really know what you're going to walk into.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, I'd be remiss in my duties here if we didn't address one thing, and that was the NYPD and 9/11. Where were you when that happened? Were you at home? Were you actually on the job? Or where were you when the towers fell?
I was in my office. Actually, that morning, I was supposed to have court in Manhattan Criminal Court, which is several blocks from the Trade Center. What saved my life more than likely was my sergeant was running late. We both had court that day. And he was farting around the office, and the first plane hit, and someone came upstairs and told us to put on the television. We saw the second plane hit. So a phone call came from downtown, everybody get into uniform and stand by. And my office, which was in the Bronx, we were down there walking around by 1:30 in the afternoon.
Oh. Wow, that was really something else, and thank you so very much for everything that you did. And in the post efforts, I understand that you were part of the Bucket Brigade, and then you wound up working out in Staten Island, going through vehicles.
Yeah, well, the first day there was no rhyme or reason to anything. The first day we were down there, we were just kind of walking around, just surveying the debris and just kind of assessing what was going on. Yeah, and then in later days, they had us on the Bucket Brigade, which we were like ants on a pile of sugar. So you had a line of cops and NYPD personnel and firefighters and construction workers, and everyone's passing a bucket down to the end. And then they're trying to sort through this stuff. And then later on, when they started bringing in the heavy equipment to getting large chunks of debris out, they sent us out to the Fresh Kills landfill, which is an abandoned dump out in Staten Island. And they had us like opening up the cars to make sure that no one had perished inside.
Oh, that is something else. That kind of sticks with you too, doesn't it?
It's something that I would have never have imagined. You know, when I became a cop, I thought the worst thing that was going to happen to me was, seeing, dead people or possibly, getting involved in a shooting, worst case scenario. Never could I have imagined, being involved in something that's, unfortunately part of American history now.
Right. All right, we're going to change subjects here. We've had 5 books talking about being a police officer. Your latest book is called Confessions of a Catholic High School Graduate, something that I am very familiar with because I was raised a Catholic outside of Chicago, and I know the subject quite well. I guess this is one of those books where you just write what you know. Isn't that right, Vic?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about me growing up in the Bronx. My name was Irish and Italian and a little bit of the mafia sprinkled in. Public school kid up to 8th grade. And one day my father tells me, you're going to Catholic high school next year. I'm like, Catholic high school? We don't even go to mass. Like, I had made my sacraments and everything. So I'm like, what is this guy kidding me? And he goes, you're a clown. You're going to be a bigger clown. So pick a school run by the men in black. And, it's a journey. It's a rite of passage book. I mean, there's stories in there from growing up and trying to sell raffle tickets for the school in a Catholic neighborhood was like trying to sell Bibles at the Vatican. And I walked into a mob bar trying to sell raffle tickets, and mobsters were throwing money at me. My father almost crucified me for doing that.
That's a good one. Now, I didn't graduate Catholic high school. I actually graduated from public school, but I attended CCD or PSR as it's called today. Yeah. So, until I got confirmed. I did attend St. Luke's School the first 3 years that I was actually going to elementary school, and I actually have the scar from Sister John Miriam's ruler to prove it. Any run-ins with nuns that stand out in your book?
Oh yeah, nuns, priests. We used to play wiffle ball across the street from Preston High School, which is actually where J Lo went to high school and was in there. Well, we're about the same age. I didn't know her, but we're about the same age. And we used to play wiffle ball in front of this all-girls Catholic high school to check out the girls while they were getting dismissed. And the wiffle balls would go over into Preston's yard, and we would go traipsing through their English garden. And the nuns told us like 100 times, "We don't want you coming in here." Well, then they locked the fence. So we used to hop the fence and collect our wiffle balls. And one time, the nuns started chasing us in their outfits. And a nun's outfit isn't meant for the 40-yard dash. So then they got creative, and they went undercover. And the next thing you know, I'm in that yard trying to get my wiffle balls. And here come these nuns in pantsuits and Mary Janes checking us around the schoolyard. And I had heard stories, and I wasn't going to hang around to find out. So over the fence I went, and that was it for me.
Wow. That's a good one. That's a good one. Now, back in the 70s, George Carlin had a hilarious bit about going to the confessional and waiting for a visiting priest to hear confessions. Got anything similar to that?
Yeah, I got chased out of a confessional. We were talking about CCD.
Yeah.
I was making CCD, and the last thing you were going to do before you made your confirmation was you had to go confess. And I got to the church late. My father was pissed off, and they were closing up the church. And this old Irish priest, he was upset. He wanted to go have dinner, and here me and my brother come at 7 o'clock, and the church is closing up. He opens the church back up. I'm in the confessional booth. My brother's outside. We're the only ones in the church. And after every bless me, Father, for I had sinned, he just took my head off. And after about the third trivial sin, I said, Father, you don't want me in here. I don't want to be in here. Can we just call it a day? Well, he goes bananas and starts yelling and screaming. I'm trying to get out of the confession booth. My brother, who in my books I refer to as Fredo, Fredo's holding me inside the confession booth. I give the door a shot, knock my brother on his ass. The two of us come running out of the church as gangbusters. I don't want this priest to come outside and meet my father. I got to put some distance between him and I. I shut the lights off because when he reopened the church, I saw the electric box. I shut the lights off to, kind of put some distance between us, and we escaped. But, kids got the memory of flies. 2 days later, when I go to make my confessional, he pulled me out of the classroom and tuned me up in another classroom.
Am I absolved from my sins, Father?
Oh, and then some.
Here's one for you. Our associate priest was hearing confessions. My dad was in there for a long time. He comes out chuckling. Apparently, the priest was kind of catnapping between confessions, and my dad was gently tapping on the screen. Father, are you there?
Yeah, your father got a pass, yeah.
Now, here's one of my favorite childhood memories. I was an altar server, and one of my responsibilities was during the consecration of the body and blood, I had to ring the bells. Well, we were kneeling on these pads, these little velvet pads, that were on these marble stairs on the altar, and I managed to knock the bells off the marble stairs, and it went ding, 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 and Father Vogt gave me the dirtiest look I've ever seen. Anything like that? Did you ever have to serve altar server?
I did not, but senior year I went to an all boys Catholic high school, so senior year they were taking like 30 or 40 of us at a time, and we had to do this retreat at a Catholic retreat house. And it was, guest speakers, and basically they knew we were graduating, and they wanted to keep us in the church. So it was like a last-ditch effort to really, get their point across. And one of the guest speakers, I don't know why, was this poor, haggard, middle-aged woman from AA. And she goes up on stage, and she's going on about the dangers of alcohol. And I mean, I appreciate it now. As a smart-ass 18-year-old, I didn't. And we're sitting there, and she turns around and she says, as a result of drinking too much and alcohol and staying out late at night and picking up strange men at bars, she said they used to refer to her as Miss Rosie Rottencrotch. So she's going on about strange men at bars. So she goes, any questions? So I raised my hand, and I said, Miss Rottencrotch, what made them strange? Well, the whole, auditorium broke out into laughter, and there were a couple of brothers descending on me. So I got out of my chair, and I tried to escape. And I got grabbed. I got dragged out of the pew. I was beaten severely, and then another brother took pity on me and pulled me aside and kind of stopped me from getting the beat down that I deserved.
So whether you're Catholic or not, I highly recommend you check out this book. I just got a chance to preview it a little bit of it over the holiday weekend, and it is hilarious. I really highly recommend you get this. Now, these are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, just about everywhere, right, Vic?
Yeah, for the most part, Amazon. So if you just go on Amazon to the book section and type in Vic Ferrari, all my books will come up, and they're paperback for $10.
Oh, so yeah, you can't beat it. Really, it's a great entertainment. The thing is, this is always referred to as the bathroom readers, the stuff that you actually just leave in the bathroom.
Absolutely.
Someone's going to come out laughing their butt off at just some of these stories. The police stories are hilarious. This book about going to a Catholic high school, also hilarious. The main reason because I can sympathize. I can really, truly, I've been through it. I'll never forget playing tennis with Father Vogt and him cheating. I'm going, wait a minute, Father. Wasn't that in? That looked into me. No, that was out.
It's so funny you should say that because, right, as a child, you look at them like they're not people. They're like these spiritual superior beings. And like you said, the more time you spend with them, the more you realize they're just people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What other things should we know about you, Vic, and these books that we haven't mentioned already?
After a 20-year career with the New York City Police Department, I got into writing. I've written these series of books. They're all loaded with short stories about interesting criminals, crime cases I worked on. My book, Grand Theft Auto, the NYPD's Auto Crime Division, is everything you wanted to know about the stolen car industry, who steals your car, a car thief's mindset, what happens at the chop shop, where your parts go. And there's also a chapter in there, how to protect yourself from getting your vehicle stolen.
Oh, that's worth it right there. For $10? Hey, you know what you should do? You should go ahead and say, I got this book, and you should be able to deduct money off of your insurance policy because now you know.
That's a good point.
I'm trying to help you sell some books, bud. I thought that was a good idea.
You're doing a good job.
How about a website for you, Vic? You got a website we should know about?
I have an Instagram and a Twitter account at VicFerrari50 if your listeners want to get a hold of me and ask me a question or have an idea.
Awesome. Very good. Vic, I really appreciate you starting off our new year with a fun story like this. And I thank you so much for being a guest on the Someone You Should Know podcast, Vic. This has been great. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. And Rick, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.